Hi, my name is Lily and welcome back to my channel, and in this video I'm going to be talking about some of the books I hope to see adapted soon. So I've kind of split this up into two sections. I'm going to talk about books that have already been optioned, but you know, just because they're options doesn't mean they're actually going to get adapted, and I'm going to talk about the adaptations I want rather than what they've been optioned for. And then I'm going to talk about books that haven't been optioned yet but I hope get optioned in the future for adaptation. So first up in the ones that have already been optioned is the one and only Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston. So this one has been optioned to be made into a movie series. Like I said, I want this to be adapted, that's the whole point of this video. I am excited, but I actually think Amari and the Night Brothers would make a much better TV series. So the reason that I think this would be better as a TV series is I think there's a lot that goes on in this book that I feel will be missed and cut out in a movie. Like, it'll be really hard to condense everything that happens in this book down. I feel like we're going to miss some of the nuance and some of the commentary that we get in this book, and I think a TV series would be much more fitting. And I think it could be like, you could end up doing a series per book depending on how chunky the books end up being, but this whole book could definitely be adapted into a series, perhaps not the long form American series you get that are like 24 episodes long, but more of the European length series that are like 10 to 12 maybe most episodes per series. I think that would work really, really well here. I just think that the supernatural investigations world is just so creative and inventive, and I would think it would just translate amazingly well onto camera. I think you could make a whole franchise out of this. They could be spin-offs and everything, and I just think they could make like little action figures of everybody. I just think this would be an amazing adaptation. I think it would really help to get another wave of children into reading again if they see the adaptation and then decide to pick up the book. I feel like it could be the next like Harry Potter adaptation that gets kids into reading again. So yeah, I would really, really love to see this adaptation happen. The thing is, even though things get optioned, doesn't mean the adaptations are actually going to happen, especially for people like debut authors or people who haven't had a successful adaptation before. There are no guarantees. So I really hope this does get adapted, and I hope if they do follow the movie route that it continues to be amazing. But of course, as we've seen from books like ACOTAR, sometimes they'll be optioned for movies and then the demand for a TV series is so great they decide to switch, which is what happened. ACOTAR was originally supposed to be a movie series and is now going to be a TV series, so you never know, this could get changed into a TV series. But either way, I really hope we get an adaptation because I just think this will be explosive on screen. Now, another one that I really think would translate well to TV is Caraval by Stephanie Garber. This, as all of these ones in this section, has already been optioned. This was optioned before it even came out, which I think also happened with Amari, but it hasn't been made yet. And Caraval came out in 2015, the original trilogy is now complete, so you'd hope they'd see the popularity of this series and still want to adapt it, but as Stephanie Garber has said herself, it's been optioned but you never really know what's going to happen. I don't think it's clear whether or not it's going to be a movie or a TV series, but I think this is another fantasy that would translate well as a TV series. I wouldn't hate it as a movie, I think it would still make a fun movie, but I feel like if they made it into a TV series, it could be, especially the second book, Legendary, could really, really take off and could be having the same level of popularity as the Shadow and Bone series. I feel like you could do a lot more with the characters and the world because Stephanie Garber put so much work into creating Caraval and the world and everywhere they visit. And I just think you could see more magic through a TV series than you could with a movie. But a movie would also work well because there would be a good fast pace that this book doesn't always have. There's definitely parts you could trim down and speed up, and I don't think that would hurt the story so much. So either way, I think this one would be a good movie or TV series. It's another fantasy that I think would just be so magical on screen. It's not going to be the kind of adaptation that is as fantastical and epic as things like Amari and the Night Brothers would be. This is one that'd be more enchanting and magical, and I just think it will translate so well if they do decide to adapt it, but we will see. Now, the next one is pretty much guaranteed to be getting its adaptation, and that is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. This one was optioned before its release as well, which isn't surprising because The Martian, which is another Andy Weir book, was adapted into a movie by the same name, and that movie did amazingly, amazingly well, had a really stellar cast. It was just such a great adaptation, and that adaptation is actually partially credited for helping to give Andy Weir's books more popularity. And So before this book even published, they said they were going to option it. His other book, Artemis, which is less well known, has also been optioned. I believe that's been optioned to be made into a TV series, but is not as solid as Project Hail Mary. Project Hail Mary has been optioned to be adapted into a movie, and it's potentially going to be starring Ryan Gosling. I say potentially because he is currently attached to the project and has confirmed that he will be playing the main character if the project goes ahead, but you never know, they could get down to it and scheduling conflicts could mean he doesn't actually end up playing the main character. But I think he would be amazing. I feel like his sense of dry humour and his kind of, I don't know, his pessimism fits really well with our character in the book, and I think that I agree with the choice of making it into a movie because Andy Weir's books are great to read, but they do get a little bit repetitive and they are quite long, and I don't think it hurts them to take out some parts and speed it up a little bit. The Martian, the movie, was definitely adapted very, very well. They did take things out, but I don't think it hurt the story, and I feel like they can do exactly the same thing with Project Hail Mary. Now, The Martian has already proven that you can make a really incredible movie with one main star taking most of the screen time by himself, and so I think we can see that this is going to be amazing, and having such a strong actor like Ryan Gosling in the leading role will definitely do it well. I just think that the humour will be amazing. I think it's another movie adaptation that will bring more people into the sci-fi genre, and I like that it is sci-fi, but it's not I don't know, you get the stereotype from a lot of people who don't engage with sci-fi a lot that it is very dry, very misogynistic, and I feel like this doesn't do that, and I feel like it will help shine a really good light on sci-fi again, much like The Martian did. I just feel like Andy Weir's characters really pop on screen. I definitely think our main character in this book, Ryland, will definitely do that as well. And I just think it would be such a funny, enjoyable movie. It's a story that nicely wraps up, so it'll be told really well in one movie. And yeah, I really, really hope this does go ahead. I'm going to be looking out for more information as it comes out. The final one on books that have already been optioned is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Morena Garcia. This has been optioned by Hulu for a horror miniseries, I think. So I'm excited. We don't have Hulu in the UK. They usually end up on, I think, Disney Plus or various other subscription services in the UK, but we do usually get them when they go on Hulu. I think the choice of doing it as a mini-series works really well. It's definitely not a long-form story, and I think the slow burn of the book will work really well over, say, like 6 episodes. This book is kind of split into 2 halves. You have the beginning, the slow burn, that is kind of unveiling the mysteries of the house and the tensions in the family, and you kind of see how this is starting off as more of like a historical drama and the tensions build, and then you have the big like horror reveal that happens kind of in the middle, and the rest of the book is then more explicitly horror with things I can't talk about because of spoilers, and I think that transition will work really, really well. It kind of reminds me of American Horror Story Hotel. I feel like it would have the similar progression there, and I think that's going to translate really well. I think a dark and moody miniseries is going to be so exciting to watch, and I really hope that they do it well. And I'm hoping that because it's been confirmed for Hulu, that means it's going to be more likely, but honestly, who knows? I just think that the tension, the atmosphere, and the creepy characters will definitely grip viewers, and I just think it will be amazing. So now moving on to books that haven't been optioned yet, or not optioned as far as I'm aware. If they have been, let me know because I can get excited. And these are all books that I think should be optioned in the future and would make amazing adaptations, and I will explain the different adaptation choices for each book. First of all, I'd really like to see an adaptation of Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. If you have been watching me for a while, you'll know that I really, really loved this book when I read it, and I think it would be an amazing adaptation. I'm kind of nervous about this because the main character is autistic, but it isn't actually explicitly stated on paper, so I would worry in an adaptation that they wouldn't make it explicit either, and it could lead to a lot of mocking and I don't know, a lot of ableism towards autistic people. But I feel like if it's done well, that it could translate really well. And I think if they do it as a drama rather than a comedy, as it's kind of tried to be marketed as in the UK, I think if they stuck to it as a drama as the book kind of is, then it would make a really great movie adaptation. I just don't think there's enough content for a TV series. I don't think it has enough interest for one, but I think it would make a really gripping movie to watch as like a single watch. It's one of those that I could see being nominated for like best movie at the Oscars and people kind of being a bit snooty about it, but I think in a good way. I think it could be a very good intellectual film if it was made. I would really want it to be made by Japanese creators in Japanese and be subtitled, because I feel like that would be most true to the book. I think it just really shines an interesting light on Japan and being autistic in Japan and the expectations that women have. And I think of the two Sayaka Murata books I've read, this is the one that's definitely more adaptable. Earthlings you definitely could not adapt, I don't think. Or if you could, it would be a solid 18. But I just think this would play out really well on screen. I think it'd be very interesting to watch, because when I was reading it I could really imagine it in my head. So yeah, I just think it would be a great movie. And of course I've got to bring up another favourite that I mention nearly every video and that is the Bergman Brothers series by Chloe Leese. I would love to see a movie series of this, like a whole franchise where each Bergman sibling gets their own movie. As much as I would love a TV series so I could spend as much time in this world as possible, I don't think that these romances have enough for a whole series per book, but I do think that a movie per book would work really well. What I do like about Chloe Leese books is they're super slow burn, and I think that tension would play out really well in a movie. It would be a good like story mountain in a movie, and I think that the spicy content could be adapted fairly well for a movie, in that there's not so much of it in the books that they couldn't then make a story, or like it would have to be a solid 18, like, you know, 50 Shades. I feel like they could adapt it very tastefully. I think it's written very tastefully, and I feel like the chemistry and the romance between the characters would just be so amazing to see. And yeah, I would really love to see a movie per book and a whole like series made of it. I doubt it will ever happen because it's so uncommon for romance books to be adapted if they're not super popular books, but we can always hope. Next we have the Isles of Storm and Sorrow series by Bex Hogan. This is the second one, Venom, just because it was the first one I could find. The first one is called Viper. I haven't actually finished the series, I haven't read the last one, but still, I just think we need a new swashbuckling pirates adaptation. I do think these ones could be a TV series or a film. I feel like if it was going to be a TV series, it would again need to be like a mini series per book. It couldn't be a longer form series, but it would also make a good movie. I feel like they could condense down the key parts of each book into a movie as well. And it would be an amazing drama. I feel like it would just play out so well on screen. The tension, I can just imagine the CGI, just, oh. We need more pirate movies and more pirate series. We don't have enough, and I feel like Pirates of the Caribbean is kind of dominating the pirate genre in movies at the moment, even still. I feel like if we adapted the Isles of Storm and Sorrow series, that could be the new like pirate epic that everyone's talking about. Whilst it doesn't have the same kind of cheeky humour that Pirates of the Caribbean has, I feel like it's a completely different take on pirates, and I just want to see pirates more. I think it would make an amazing movie series, and I feel like you could also end up making spin-offs from it if it was to do well. Like they could make their own movies about what happens after the trilogy, and I really think that the representation of having like a female lead in a pirate movie who is like the sole lead would be amazing. Yeah, I just think the world would translate well to movies. It's not so complex that it would need like a Game of Thrones level explanation of the world, but it's still creative enough that I feel like people could really engage with it. So yeah, I just think this would be a great movie series. Now I'm kind of surprised my next one hasn't been optioned yet, so if it has, let me know. But I think you could make a really good adaptation of The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. And I don't actually think I'd want a TV or movie for this one. I actually think you could make an amazing play. I think it'd be difficult. I'm not gonna lie to you there. Yes, it would be difficult with the different magical creatures that you have in this book, but I don't think it would be impossible. And I just can imagine this play being so enthralling. I thought about this after I saw The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman adapted as a stage play, and that is my absolute favourite play of all time. If you're in the UK, you need to go and see it. It is incredible. And the way they managed to adapt this using puppetry and using just the atmosphere and lighting, and it's incredible because most of that book is about a non-human character. It's just incredible. It is so incredible, and I feel like if they gave the same significantly less creepy treatment to The House in the Cerulean Sea, it would make an amazing play that I feel like it could be something that families could potentially go and enjoy if they did it the right way. I know this isn't a kid's book, but I definitely feel like it could be a play that could be quite accessible to more ages. I just think the humour would play out really well. I can imagine them like trooping off in their like adventure uniforms on stage, and I just think, oh, wouldn't you as a small child want to play like a slime monster on stage? No? Just me? Like I really think this would make a good stage play. I know the author has mentioned before that he would love for it to be adapted as like an animated TV series or animated movie. I would also love that, but there's something about making it into a stage play that just really, really appeals. Sorry if the lighting has changed or anything, my phone died and I had to take a break from filming, so hopefully it's not too different. Luckily it cut off right as I was finishing talking about my last book. But the next book that I would like to see as an adaptation is Fat Chance Charlie Vega by Crystal Maldonado. I think this would make an amazing movie. I think it would be a really great like teen rom-com that would be similar to things like To All the Boys I've Loved Before and Pumpkin. I just think that it is a great message, it's really fat positive, and I think it'd be great for teens to be able to watch and to feel more confident about themselves, feel more comfortable in themselves. I just think it would be a really great message for teens. I think it would make a great movie because there's enough content in there for a movie but not a show. I guess if they were to make it into a show, it would have to be a bit like the Simon universe where they branch off and tell other stories, but I think this would be a great movie in itself, and I just think that teens need this. It's such a good YA romance with a really good message and explores really interesting themes, and I think it is something that I would love to see and I think would be great representation for teens to watch. I think our main character is really warm and relatable, and if they were to adapt it in the next few years it would still be really relevant and people would really buy into it. And finally, I think they should adapt Lovely War by Julie Berry. I think this would either need to be a fairly long film or a mini-series again. I am leaning more towards a long film. Personally, I would take out the part about the gods narrating it because I think that it doesn't add much to the story. If they were going to include it, I would just have it as a quick intro and maybe use them as like a voiceover occasionally, kind of like how they do in Call the Midwife, but I wouldn't make it a key part of the adaptation. I think each character is really, really strong and would be a great presence on screen. I think the beautiful love stories would translate really well. I think that there are plenty of directors out there that would know how to handle a love story set in World War I really delicately and adapt it really well, and I think it's just something that would appeal to a really wide range of audiences as a movie. I can just see so many different people going in and seeing this movie. I could see it doing really well and getting nominated if it was to be done well, and I think that telling different war stories is a really good way to approach things because we see a lot about soldiers and their journeys just being soldiers, but we don't get to see much about what their lives were like outside of being a soldier, and focusing on the love stories of the four characters in this book gives a different viewpoint on the war and how war brought people together as well as breaking people apart. And I think that that is something that we haven't really seen much of yet. Okie dokes, that is it. Those are all of the books, well, not all of the books, but those are all the books I'm going to be talking to you about today that I would like to be adapted into some kind of movie, TV show, play, and yeah, I would love it if these happen. I don't think many of them will, because let's face it, of all the books that are published that people love, very, very few ever actually get adapted. But we can always hold out hope, and as books rise and fall in popularity, we will see if they get adapted or not. And like I said earlier, I included ones that have already been optioned because you never actually know what's going to happen. Sometimes things get optioned for years and years and years and never happen. Children of Blood and Bone was optioned before it ever came out, and that still hasn't been adapted, much like Caraval. So you just never know. Like when you consider Rick Riordan announced the Percy Jackson TV series that is going to be true to age and true to book with Disney Plus, and he said, like, look, they've agreed to option it but we haven't actually got the green light yet. He was very cautious to say that it's not a guarantee, and they had to write scripts before they would even get the full green light to be able to start with casting. So it's something that people don't appreciate when these option announcements come out, that it's not a guarantee. So I'm really hopeful that more of the books that I love get adaptations, and they get good adaptations, and we will just have to see what happens in the future. Let me know in the comments if there's any books that you'd like to see adapted, and even if it's a book that's already been adapted but adapted poorly and you'd like to see it adapted again, much like Percy Jackson, I'd love to hear about it. So yeah, just let me know. I love talking about adaptations because I think there's some really amazing ones and some really rubbish ones, but people just love seeing the things they love being translated into different forms. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a like, consider subscribing to see more content from me. All of my social media links are in the description below. If you'd like to leave me a comment to let me know you are here, leave me a camera emoji in the comments below. Thank you again for watching. Bye!